And we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the two Abdullahs. It's been way too long, way too long. So we have sort of disappeared for a while, and now we're back, and we're going to try to do this more often. So we have a really interesting episode for you today. You are not going to you are going to regret missing this if you log off. Don't log off. Stay on. Wait and see what we have for you today. Gondal, how's it going?
Hello, everybody. How's it going? It's been a while. I hope everybody can hear me fine. Everybody's been wondering where I have been. I disappeared off the scene, not making any videos or any content really. But don't worry, I was really busy. I have something in the works. It's going to be very interesting. It's almost at the same quality of the Epileptic Prophet, but you don't want to miss it. I have been reading, doing lots of research, and have some very, very interesting content got ready for you guys. And as you'll see today, we'll show you a glimmer of that, the type of research that I'm now involved in, what the scope of the next few years is going to look like for us. Anyways, over to you, Samir, if you want to introduce anything else before we jump right into the slides.
No, I think it's good. Just happy to be doing this again, and hopefully this is a good time for everyone. Obviously, we're going to end up excluding some people and including some people, so it is what it is. Let me see about sharing the slide news layout. Okay, there we go.
Perfect. Alrighty. So I'm going to go and start. So today's topic is going to be very interesting. It's going to be about Islam, evolution, and anthropology. The reasoning being is in the past, year or so, I've been reading a lot of books on evolutionary biology, Richard Dawkins, and a bunch of others, Daniel Dennett. Apart from that, a lot of anthropological books as well. One that stands out is Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. And honestly, after reading a lot of these books, you realize that human beings are essentially an animal that is expressing a behavior, which in terms turns into religion and group dynamics. And it's completely changed my view of how I perceive religion from the perspective of evolutionary biology. So it's very interesting. So we're going to get into a bunch of those things. But before that, I have some announcements to make. I'm going to be releasing all of my slides, as in there's over 1,000 plus slides. That's the work of me and Samir for the past, I don't even know, for a while, past 5 years or so. But yeah, so overview, we're going to be doing that. We're going to show you where you can get those slides, download them. They're all in PDF format. Then another very, very interesting thing that's come up is the Epileptic Prophet second edition. So as you all might be aware, the first initial series, a 7-part series, 20 hours in duration, was aired in September 2021. It's coming up to 2 years now. We've had ample time for any criticisms, any objections to be brought up. And honestly, I've gone through all of them. So I've updated a lot of content in there. As in, there's about 70 odd plus new slides, videos, papers, very, very robust. And I actually included a surprise at the end as well for you guys. Anyways, after that, we're going to discuss why Richard Dawkins is famous. It's not because of the God delusions. And in fact, the God delusion, I didn't even read it yet. I didn't bother reading it. I read his Selfish Gene. That's the book that put him on the map in 1976. And honestly, it's one of the most important books written in the scientific community, deemed by the Royal Society. It totally upturned biology upside down on its head. And I think it's a must read if you ever want to truly understand how evolution works. This book here, Guns, Germs, and Steel, very fascinating. It's a series of 3-4 books. This guy, Jared Diamond, does a fantastic job at summarizing the past 13,000 years, the variables, the dynamics between different tribes, communities, how and why we are living in the world we have right now. Very, very fascinating. We'll get to that as well. Then we're going to cover some global Islamic demographics, because I told you that this is a video that's going to be talking about anthropology and evolution. So we're going to get into some demographics about beliefs, education levels of Muslims, stuff like that. Then we're going to go over religion and intelligence, which has been studied from a scientific perspective. I have, I think, like 3 or 4 papers to show you guys that concludes that there is, in fact, an inverse relationship, which means that the more religious you are, the less intelligent you will be. So that's the correlation they found. The other thing, the main focus, what I want to do tonight is I want to drive home a point, which is going to be about evolutionary stable strategies and Muslims becoming one of the biggest victims of Islam. And we're going to go into a statistical analysis of Islamic violence as well. And then at the end, we're going to talk about what's going on in the world right now with freedom of speech and the Quran burnings happening in Sweden, Denmark, etc. But before we proceed with this overview, go back to Samir if any questions, any other things he wants me to point out before we go into deep.
Let's get into it. It's all good.
All righty.
Actually, let me say one more thing.
Yep.
I had the exact same experience as you. I never did God delusion. I was just like you know what? Like, because other stuff is so much better. The Selfish Gene, Blind Watchmaker, and one of the amazing things about Richard Dawkins is that someone without a science background, someone like me, can actually easily understand the concepts. And like I'm telling you, when I'm talking to people about evolution, the points from his book, The Greatest Show on Earth, they keep coming back over and over again. Like he talks about the experiment, the E. coli experiment. He talks about intermediary species. He talks about fossils. He talks about you know, all of the common, you know, why is there still monkeys? We evolved from monkeys, right? Like it's just if you know, whenever someone wants to debate evolution, I always ask them, like, have you read anything? If not, why are you talking to me? Like, go and read some books on it. And then if you don't like it, I mean, if you have some actual points to respond, okay, then we can talk. But and then even then, it's like, why are you talking to me? Go talk to a biologist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, give me a break, right?
And honestly, like you said with Dawkins, like you need to read him for his biology books. Like when you read books like The Selfish Gene, The Blind Watchmaker, The Greatest Show on Earth, The Extended Phenotype, it is truly then when you see Dawkins in his, you know, the knight in shining armor. But I'm gonna be very straight up. Out of all the books I have read in my life, which is about 300-400 books, The Selfish Gene is one of the most profound books that I have ever read, and we will get into that in a little bit. Completely like pulled the rug under my feet, honestly. But yeah, let's get to it. Oh, I see there's a question. All right.
Stop scamming Scott. Yeah, I guess thank you to everyone that's already donated. Zagros, Denver Johnson,
Thank
and
you
Stop
so
Scamming
much.
Man. And again, Denver Johnson, again, most appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Said,
we will get to all your questions at the end for sure.
Oh, I think I'm. Am I lagging or are you lagging? Okay, I think we lost Gondal. If you guys can still see me, please say something, because it looks like Abdullah Gondal got frozen. And can you guys still? Okay, so it's just Abdullah Gondal's gone. Okay, so let me check in with that. And while we're doing that, I just want to show this on the screen. Not sure if you know this, the ex-Muslim movement is gaining massive ground in India, who happens to have the third largest Muslim population of the world. Oh, you're back.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what happened there, but there was a certain type of interruption. Sorry about that.
Yep,
but let's get back to it. Yeah.
Yep, let's get back to it.
All right. I might be experiencing some bad weather, guys, so I do apologize for that. The global warming and the weather patterns are completely wild these days. Like, so yeah, sorry about that. But anyways, let's get to it. Can you still hear me? Alrighty. So these are the slides we're going to be releasing for everybody for free. So there's going to be the second edition of the Epileptic Prophet, which is about 504 slides. There's this book by Dede Kurkut that I've scanned out the relevant parts. I've also included the older version of the Epileptic Prophet, so you can have a comparison new to old. This is another book, Sword and Seizure on the Epilepsy of Muhammad by Dr. Abbas, which is included. Then we have this slideshow, 101 slides. This is a slideshow I think that I did with the Positive Prophet, has about 100,000 plus views on that stream. That's the infamous holes in the Quran narrative. And my best buddy Farid. Then we have Circus of Islam. That's a very good one for seeing the funny side of Islam, the comedy side. The Psychotic Prophet was the first stream we did regarding Muhammad's mental health. And this is the Quran preserved, I think, from 2018 or 19. And then there's Hudud, there's Genies, there's Blasphemy in Islam, Heaven, Convenient Revelations, Hell in Islam, Scandals of Aisha, Slavery, and at the end there's Surah Darwin. So basically, all these slides are in a PDF format, so you can still see them interact with all the screenshots, but the videos that are embedded in them, they won't play at the set times. So for the best viewing experience, just download the slides and watch them along the videos. Alrighty. But yeah, this is all free for you. Like, I think this is 5 years of mine and Samir's work that we're just giving out to you guys. Like, spread it, share it. And they're PDFs, so they're not too big, as in like file sizes. You can easily print them out as well. And you can compress them as well. Alrighty. Let's go to the next slide, see if there's anything else going on in the chat. All right. So what is up with the second edition of the Epileptic Prophet? So like I said, it's been 2 years, enough time for criticisms to come up, objections. So what I did is I looked over all of Farid's objections, a couple other people that I found online, and I incorporated answers to their objections with screenshots, scientific analysis, etc. in this new edition. There are actually a total of 63 new slides, new sections, never before seen evidence. And the best part I did for you guys, I included a mathematical model for statistical analysis to prove Muhammad indeed had epilepsy. We might even show that where it's very, very interesting, where the chances of him not being epileptic are like 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 100,000, depending on the type of calculation. The other thing is, like, I'm this confident now in the hypothesis that he had epilepsy, or the theory, that I'm putting a challenge out there to any serious Muslim academics or anybody who really wants to sit down, discuss, or refute the Epileptic Prophet series, which includes properly addressing the argument and not doing. We're using 10 slides to make a point, and he'll just show 1 slide and say, oh, he doesn't know anything. So the other thing I wanted to ask you is, a lot of people have been saying that the series is 20 hours long. So some of them want me to redo the series in a more condensed format. That's one option. The other option would be that I can edit into a long multi-episode mini-series and then upload it as edited videos. And then we can make that into a series. So I'm going to go to the comments, take some people's opinions, what they would want or suggest.
So maybe just turn off your camera just for a little bit, because it looks like you're a little bit lagging still.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Try putting it back on. So S-Man is saying don't condense it. So I'll click. So the question is, should we? What was the question? Let me I'll make a poll.
That's actually a good idea. Yeah, we can make a poll.
Do we want to know whether we want to redo the series, small edited videos, or not bother?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because honestly, like, it's such an important aspect of religions itself, because it doesn't have implications just for Muhammad and Islam. It has implications for almost all other major religions, where we are basically interpreting most of the major world religions as interpretations of possible hallucinatory experiences of people. But we will definitely get more into this as well. Is my my video and voice okay right now? Just gonna wait for people to say something. Let's see.
All right, so I created a poll. Should we redo the full F series? And you can choose whether you think we should go to the whole thing. Here's what you can think about. If you redo the whole thing, we're going to potentially go to a lot more content in detail and get a lot more exposure to the full series of ideas. If you want to vote no, you're on the side of making short clips, like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 12 minutes, again, which is a little bit challenging. It could be a little bit challenging sometimes, based on the depth of the topic, but those are the two options.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
at the moment, it's coming out pretty clearly in one direction. And also, do like the stream. If you are a fan of the two Abdullahs, then like the stream and let's get to as many people as possible. And
Alrighty.
yeah, so right now the results are pretty clear, and people are voting yes, redo in full. So that's
Okay.
we'll leave the chat, the thing open, and we'll continue while we'll see what people
for sure. Because honestly, this theory, I'll be very honest. Like in the first run, there were certain issues where even I caught some of my own mistakes, which I have rectified in the new second edition. There weren't anything big or anything major. It's basically some spelling mistakes and maybe one or two errors. But honestly, would love to do it this second edition. I would love to even have, somebody like Farid join in and talk to me about the mental hallucinations and, how he interprets them with his religious inclinations, or have a Muslim doctor. Like, honestly, like because the evidence is so clear that if you show it to a Muslim professional doctor and you ask him, what do you see here? He's bound by his professional knowledge to give you an answer that, okay, this does look like epilepsy, and he'll be very hard to flip it the other way. Anyways, with that aside, let's get back to.
So let me say one thing. Someone's saying Malaka Tamilan was saying make an audio version. So if you want to listen to the audio version, you can actually do that on the Friendly Ex-Muslim podcast. All of the episodes are there as well. So say you just want the audio and you don't want to go to YouTube, you can just go to the podcast, and all of the same content is there, but there's no visuals, so you'll just be able to listen to it.
The other option I was also thinking was we can take the clipping and stuff from the current series that we've already done and then just add additional or edit the current video series out where we need to, or add in additional stuff. That is one option as well. But anyways, we'll let the poll run and figure this out later. Let's get back to the slides. So we're going to be talking about the genius of Richard Dawkins and the selfish gene hypothesis and memes. A lot of people aren't actually aware that the word meme was invented by none other than Richard Dawkins in 1976 when he was discussing evolutionary biology and genes. Now, why is Dawkins famous? The thing that put him on the map was in 1976, he said that evolution doesn't actually occur at the level of the individual or the group, which was the predominant theory back then. He said that evolution occurs at the level of the genes. It is genes that are selected, and it is genes that determine what traits get passed on and in the future. And the idea what he brings up is like, look around you and you'll see that this whole planet is infected by this double helix molecule called DNA. It's replicating, it's making copies of itself. And what essentially happened is over time, the molecule wanted to survive and enveloped itself in membranes and then in more complex bodies and so on and so forth. What ends up happening is the survival from the genes perspective is the genes are putting themselves in sleeves or bodies. And then once we die, our body dies, but the genes that we have, they spawn. Think of it this way: 99.9% of species that have ever existed are extinct. Okay. But the one thing that hasn't died on this planet, at least for a few billion years, is DNA. It is such a stable molecule. It is a fascinating molecule that has created these diverse survival machines. So you're starting to see from this perspective, your whole structure of morality, religion is completely changes. Hence, I highly recommend reading this book, and I'll read out this paragraph. Individuals are not, chromosomes too are shuffled into oblivion like hands of cards soon after they're dealt. But the cards themselves survive the
Sorry, looks like we lost Gondal. I'm going to read the slides. Individuals are not stable things, they are fleeting. Chromosomes, too, are shuffled into oblivion, like the hands of cards soon after they're dealt. But the cards themselves survive the shuffling, the cards are the genes. The genes are not destroyed by crossing over, they merely change partners and march on.
That life is actually, if you view it from the evolutionary perspective, what Dawkins did, he said that it's DNA that controls the evolution and the hereditary, not the individual or the group. And then he tells us a story that everything on this planet, or every life form that has existed, 99.9 different types of species, are all extinct. But the one thing that hasn't died, that is almost immortal for the history of our planet, is the DNA, or the molecule, the replicator. So he says something very interesting. They did not die out, for they are past masters of the survival arts. But do not look for them floating loose in the sea. They gave up that cavalier freedom long ago. Now they swarm in huge colonies, safe inside gigantic, lumbering robots, sealed off from the outside world, communicating with it by tortuous indirect routes, manipulating it by remote control. They are in you and in me. They created us, body and mind, and their preservation is the ultimate rationale for our existence. They have come a long way, those replicators. Now they go by the name of genes, and we are their survival machines. So this specific thing, this specific idea of Richard Dawkins, when he brought this up, is so profound. It is one of the most profound ideas I've come across, because you now have to reimagine all of life. And once you get into this book, he talks about how gene pools interact and how behaviors are actually a lot of times being controlled by genes, and we are actually kind of almost like being pulled by these genetic strings like puppets, but we're not aware of this. It's very, very fascinating. But now we're going to get to something interesting. What are memes? So this is where we come to religion, and this is where it gets interesting. So memes are units of information that, just like genes, go through what some people call as memetic evolution. Like traits right along, or genotypes manifest in phenotypes within the DNA, the mechanism for memes to evolve is the human brain. So memes jump from brain to brain, and they evolve like that. Now, what are memes? Memes can be religions, memes can be language, culture, social rules, politics, anything. It's a unit of information. In essence, to dumb it down further, what I would say is every animal expresses a behavior. Okay, when a monkey is talking to its family, or, well, let's not talk, but interacting with its family, we'll still put it in the category of biology. But when humans, we are also animals, Homo sapiens. When we start talking, we then classify our behaviors into subcategories, which is politics or religion. But at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're expressing a behavioral phenotype, which is very essential to understand. Now, memes are very fascinating, because they can take many shapes, and they can induce a lot of different effects on the gene pool. All of this knowledge was absent from the human consciousness for most of our history, the genes, the memes, the evolutionary theory. So we're going kind of blind for most of our history. Now, I want to read this out to you guys to get you a proper idea of what Dawkins was saying himself. We need a name for the new replicator, a noun that conveys the idea of a unit of cultural transmission or a unit of imitation. My meme comes from a suitable Greek root, but I want a monosyllable. So he just details how he came up with the word meme that he was trying to make rhyme with jeans and cream. But anyways, examples of memes are tunes, ideas, catchphrases, clothes, fashions, ways of making pots, building arches. Just as genes propagate themselves in the gene pool by leaping from body to body via sperm or eggs, so memes propagate themselves in the meme pool by leaping from brain to brain via a process which, in the broad sense, can be called imitation. This is interesting, this line here. when you plant a fertile meme in my mind, you literally parasitize my brain, turning it into a vehicle for the meme's propagation. In just the way that a virus may parasitize the genetic mechanism of a host cell. This is very, very, very profound stuff. And what he's trying to get to is, just like evolution has shaped our bodies and our thoughts, evolution has also shaped our cultures, our religions, everything we do. And a lot of it is being controlled by these invisible strings that we do not see. Alrighty. How's everybody doing so far? Is it okay? Is everybody following? Is it too complex?
So far, so good. So I'll just
Any questions?
let me just give a layman's sort of explanation or reflection on what you said. So the idea is to think of something more generic than just genes. We're talking now something as generic as an idea, and ideas can also pass on just like genes pass on. So what he's done is he's created a meta concept, right? Is that right? Would you agree with that?
Yes, in a way. So basically, what he's saying is memes are the information unit equivalency of genes.
Okay.
That's what he's trying to say.
All right. So everyone's in so far so good. Should we
Alrighty,
continue
let's
to
go
next
to
slide?
next slide.
Okay.
I'm just gonna watch from your stream now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Alrighty. So once we realize that what genes are doing, before we go into Jared Diamonds, I want to mention something. So genes create memes that will favor the group. Okay. A meme survival is dependent wholly and fully on its ability to infer a survivability enhancement to the gene. Okay. Memes cannot exist without genes. In fact, memes and genes are intertwined. Now, a lot of times what we need to understand is, back in the day, imagine the hunter-gatherer type of society. You had tribes or tribelets, and the world was vastly, vastly different in terms of how people interacted, the threats they were facing, the paranoia. People were more paranoid in that regard as well. But what I want to focus on is the group evolution. How do tribes evolve and get selected? If, let's say, for example, you have a tribe that is very benign, very pacifist. If you were living 10,000 years ago, an outsider will come in and gobble over your resources if you were pacifist. Okay? So what needed to be done is natural selection will force you to evolve defense mechanisms or evolutionary tendencies where, if you're living in an environment surrounded by violence, you have to be partly violent to survive in that situation as well. Now, when you start seeing the memes evolving in that context, you have to put the context of the memes is, the success of a meme does not depend if it's objectively true. A meme can be straight up about being a flat earther meme. Okay? The meme will start becoming promiscuous as long as it allows the beholder of the meme to have an evolutionary advantage. Okay? And that's what Dawkins was saying, that memes can infect minds like parasites, but it can then, in the later part we'll get to, they can also induce effects that mimic island gigantism and island type dwarfism that we see in evolutionary biology as well. Anyways, with that aside, let's get to this guy. So this book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, one of my all-time favorite books by Jared Diamond. It's one of the first 3 books in the series. And this book is focused on the past 13,000 years. This is not talking about the genetic evolution
Sorry, you cut
here.
off.
This
Can you repeat that?
more the
Can you repeat
mimetic
that last?
evolution of our species.
Yeah, sorry.
This
Abdullah
book
Gandal?
is very, very
Can you
can you hear me?
Yeah, can you repeat that last section again?
All right. So what I was trying to talk to you about was the Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. He focuses on the mimetic aspect of our evolution, especially the past 13,000 years post-agricultural revolution. And this is very, very fascinating because it is at this point where agriculture then starts driving forward some very interesting trajectories into how we evolved and how we ended up with the religions we have now. Uh, so a few things that I wanted to touch base on is evolution of agriculture drove civilization. So agriculture evolution led into language, led into more complex record keeping, written records. Agriculture then allowed for something that's very interesting. If you have your own food source at a stable place, agriculture will allow you to produce dense nutrition that can sustain a high amount or a high dense population. Okay. So the importance of this is that if you were a hunter gatherer type, you don't have time out of your free time to go sit down and make inventions and stuff. Okay. You'll be too busy going getting food and all that. Uh, Over time, when you start producing agriculture, you can feed a lot more people. You have surplus of food, which allows sedentary lifestyles and specialists to evolve. When people are not always running after looking out for food, then they have time to sit down, make pots, make paintings, and stuff like that. So that's one way how agriculture enabled us free time to make more things. The other interesting thing a lot of people forget about is agricultural animals and crowd diseases. Almost all of the first few plagues in human history started where? In the Fertile Crescent, which was what? The heart of the domestication of animals. And a lot of our diseases like rabies and stuff, they jumped to us from domestic animals. Now, why is that important? Because we're going to get to something that's going to be mind blowing, where the Justinian plague and this exact thing played a very pivotal role in the expanse of Islam. Um, anyways, Jared Diamond does in his book talk about how religion fits into the paradigm. He in fact mentions that religion is an institution, a furthering of institutionalization of agriculture. Because what happens is once there's an agricultural boom, the population density goes up. But then you need to homogenize the population upon shared set of beliefs. If they're not united, they're going to fall apart. So hence you utilize religion as a uniting force. So you see that in cultures of the past, religious buildings also served as centers of not just social, but also political gatherings. So rulers will use religion to homogenize society. Now, another important thing I'm going to bring up from an evolutionary biology perspective is think about it this way. If you have a group of 10 people, okay, and there's another group of 10 people, one group is in internal conflict where its beliefs are not homogenized, okay? And then there's the other group which is homogenized. It has the same set of beliefs. Who do you think is at more of an advantage of winning? The united group or the one that's fighting itself? Right? So you'll see that evolution will always push you to have a united set of shared beliefs, and it will penalize any dissidents from the shared set of beliefs. What I'm trying to get to is, how does the blasphemy law tie into this, and where does the evolution of the blasphemy law come in? Now, a lot of animals will also behave in this way, where if you differ from the norms of the group, you will be eliminated. Okay. But what I'm not trying to say is I'm not arguing for a blasphemy law in the modern world. What I'm trying to give people is an idea of how it would have evolved by evolutionary pressures, socio-dynamic pressures. Okay. To give you a converse idea, the importance of homogenizing society upon at least a certain set of shared ideas is very important. And this was, even Muhammad was threatening this social homogeneity of the Meccans. Hence, they didn't like it at first, and they were very against him. So that on its own is a very, very interesting facet of the evolution of social group dynamics that we need to keep in mind. But anyways, Jared Diamond also goes into the technological disparity and clashes, where why did the Spanish or the Europeans decimate the Native Americans? Was it because of crowd diseases, because of agriculture? Why couldn't the colonizers colonize Africa or India, but were able to colonize North America? So these kind of factors when you get into is very, 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 very fascinating. Anyways, I would say this book is essential to gain a critical understanding of why do certain cultures or societies overpower one another and how those events from thousands of years ago have still shaped us today. In short, Europe's colonization of Africa had nothing to do with differences between European and African peoples themselves, as white racists assume. Rather, it was due to accidents of geography and biogeography, and particularly to the continent's different areas, axes, and suits of wild plants and animal species. That is, different historical trajectories of Africa and Europe stem ultimately from differences in real estate. What he's trying to say here is people in North America didn't have horses. They're not native to that continent. So when thousands of years of evolution and horses came with the Europeans, Native Americans were like, whoa, what's this? There's a lot of factors that aren't people specific, but environment specific. For example, the same group in history will get split into two and end up on two different islands. One island is rich in metals. The other is only made up of coral reefs. So 500 years later, what you see is one set of that same initial tribe has developed much more advanced technology based on metals, and the other one is still stuck with coral reefs and wooden sticks. So these kind of nuances, when you start to understand, are very, very fascinating. Anyways, let's take any questions or any other discussion points before we move forward. All right. Samir, do you have anything to add?
Nope.
All righty. So let's go to the next slide. All right. So another interesting thing, and I want to bring this up, is a lot of people do not realize how crowd diseases or animals have shaped us. So I'm going to bring up an interesting fact. I believe the cow was domesticated in two different places individually, like two different times in history. One was in India, and I think one was in Europe. But there's a reason why a lot of anthropological societies, older societies, would worship the cow because it provided sustenance to the community. So worshiping and protecting the cow as a sacred animal makes sense from an evolutionary perspective because you're protecting your sustenance and food source. So that's why you'll see that these kind of trends and things come out of evolution. Now, a technological disparity. So what happened in North America is quite shocking. Like you can see, cumulative mortalities of these previously unexposed peoples from Eurasian germs range from 50 to 100%. For instance, the Indian population of Hispaniola declined from around 8 million when Columbus arrived in 1492 to 0 by 1535. And a lot of times this guy will point out in the books that North Americans were not killed by the steel or the guns, but it was the germs that killed them. And you'll see that these germs will pop up initially in the Justinian plague in relation to Islam in a little bit. Anyways, but when Cortez's next onslaught came, the Aztecs were no longer naive and fought street by street with utmost tenacity. What gave the Spaniards a decisive advantage was smallpox, which reached Mexico in 1520 with one infected slave arriving from Spanish Cuba. The resulting epidemic proceeded to kill nearly half of the Aztecs, including their emperor. Aztec survivors were demoralized by the mysterious illness that killed Indians and spared Spaniards, as if advertising the Spaniards' invincibility. By 1618, Mexico's initial population of about 20 million had plummeted to about 1.6 million. So what you see is this is not just the white people coming from Europe and just killing them with their swords, the diseases, because Europe at that time had big city centers and domestication for thousands of years before the natives had. Europeans had evolved crowd diseases that had never existed in North America. Anyways, so what he's trying to say here is measles and TB evolved from diseases of cattle, influenza for a disease of pigs, and smallpox possibly from a disease of camels. The Americas had very few native domesticable species from which humans could acquire such diseases. Another thing interesting is in Africa, you see that a lot of the wild animals are not domesticable, the natural species there. So they couldn't domesticate. So despite there being multiple different points on the planet which fit the Fertile Crescent or the Mediterranean climate, it was only one spot that sparked it. Anyways, another thing I wanted to point out that it's at the bottom here is Jared Diamond focuses on this literacy. Why were the European colonizers so effective in spreading over all across the world? Was literacy. They could preserve information in a more precise, accurate format and then pass it on to other people versus oral traditions. Okay. Now, the interesting thing is agriculture started 13,000 years ago. Language wasn't invented until like 3,500 to 4,500 years ago. Okay. This is still 3,000 years before Islam. When we understand the cognitive importance of language, and the effect it has had on the trajectory of evolution of different tribes, the idea that Allah, out of his whole wisdom, chose an illiterate guy who couldn't read or write as his prophet is a blunder that cannot be forgiven. Okay? And you will get to something very interesting in a little bit and how it played out. But yeah, let's go to the next slide if you have any questions.
Do you think that, you know how the Arabian society had, this memorization going on and the poetry and all that, but they didn't memorize things as long as the Quran typically, right? There's probably no need to do that. And Muhammad comes along and he's, narrating things, ad hoc as they're coming about. People are scrambling to write them on, like parchment. If they actually, I don't think they even got parchment. It was mostly like bones, shoulder bones of animals and whatever they could get. Now, the only way to really make this survive, and we know even from the hadith that there were times where this was disastrous, was to enforce mass memorization. And so he artificially tried to preserve the meme of the Quran. Would you say that that's
a very, very interesting way? Because you can think of it, if this prophet had realized that he could just get it written down and the importance of language and written things, he could have preserved the Quran in a much better format, and we wouldn't have the holes in the narrative and the whole Osman burning the copies of the Quran and fighting of the companions. But yeah, that's a very, very valid point. Like that itself, like think about it this way. Had Muhammad been literate, the quality of the Quran would have been much better. The lots of different trajectories would have been taken up, the preservation of the Quran and all that. With that being said, we have to remember that not all oral traditions are 100% fabricated. Yes, there is some truth to them because predominantly when you look at our history, we've been speaking for hundreds of thousands of years, but we invented written language only 4,500 years ago.
Right, but not verbatim, basically with the expectation of like what the Quran is at. The ultimate verbatim, literal word of God, letter for letter being preserved. That is not, technically feasible to the extent that is being claimed by the Quran, right?
No. I mean, we already know the holes in the narrative disproves that. So for details on that, you can go to the specific thing. I mean, we wouldn't have the 7 or the 10 or the 14 qira'at if it was preserved properly.
Right. Imagine in an alternate universe where they actually had writing. Muhammad could read and write, and he told his followers to write it. And then we had Muslims claiming it's been preserved miraculously by pen and paper. Imagine that world.
Right? Exactly. But nonetheless, I mean, at least what we can say is that Muhammad's own in promotion of literacy, the Iqra in the Quran, is still at least somewhat in a positive light, even though for the Arabs, I mean, there were a lot more intelligent people in his community or more literate people in his community at that time that saw through his BS right away. But like I said, it's not about the meme itself being true. It depends on the intelligence of who you're imposing the meme upon. If there's dumb people, they vote. For example, and again, take democracy. If you give an uneducated group the power to vote, they will elect a person just like them who's equally uneducated into power. So it's a circle.
Yeah.
But anyways, let's go to the next slide.
And
Now we're gonna.
that's the whole rise of populist leaders we have, right?
Mm-hmm.
People that
Like,
leaders that say what people want to hear, right?
mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other thing is, like, if you look at politics, like, you can actually have people based on merit working to solve actual issues. But no, it's not about that, because to get votes, you got to dumb yourself down to the level of the voter base. Okay. And this is very important. All right. But let's get to the next one. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. How did Islam begin? So there's actually a whole paper written about it, and this is something that I kept telling: crowd diseases, plagues, like we mentioned in the past, where the North Americans were just decimated by the new diseases they hadn't encountered before. In this situation, Islam was advantaged by its nomadic lifestyle, and the harsh environment of the desert wouldn't allow these kind of crowd diseases to evolve. Plus, the Arabian Peninsula didn't have huge population or dense cities, which would allow the transmission of these diseases and mutations. Because the more number of people you have, the more vessels you're providing for the virus or the bacteria to mutate and make different forms of attack to kill the population. All right. So here we see something very important. He says on the top, right, the rapid expansion from the year 622 of the Hijra, the rapid growth coincided with the spread of the bubonic plague in the Middle East. Although a first epidemic had been documented in the year 570. Interesting. So there are some academic articles that I did include in the Epileptic Prophet series that mentioned that when Abraha came with his elephants, he brought the first instance of plague with him. Elephants weren't the norm back in the Arabian Peninsula. In fact, I mean, in a desert environment, they would pass away. So that was new. And that's something, like I said, the horses coming from Europe, same way. These kind of factors play out. Although a first epidemic had been documented in the year 570, the pre-Islamic phase in the Arabian Peninsula, 5 severe episodes of plague sub-epidemics are classically considered in the Middle Eastern geographic area. The first occurred during the year 627 to 628 AD. That's about 4 to 5 years before Muhammad died. And the fifth in the year 716. That's almost 80 years after that. It may be stated that at the emergence of Islam, the geographic region, including Egypt, Palestine, Syria, Iraq, and Iran, was affected by an endemic plague. Very, very fascinating when you start thinking about it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Let's go down here. The plague significantly contributed to the weakening of the Eastern Roman Empire and the rapid decline of the Persian Empire. What happened is both of those empires right next to Islam got weakened. They were also, for the past 20 years, involved in the Great War. So the plague and that, weakening those empires, allowed a power pocket to develop, which was filled by, guess what, Islam. We see a modern synthesis of this situation, which was ISIS after the Arab Spring. So like I said, there are very rational, logical explanations. If you do read an anthropology history, you can see how it all evolved. It's just very simple Homo sapiens, memes, genes happening. But anyways, subsequently, when the rapid decline of the Persian Empire, while during the early expansion phases of Islam. So Islam is expanding and the other empires are just being decimated by plagues. So it's allowing Islam to expand. It indirectly supported the nomadic Arab tribes, which, moving on desert or semi-desert territories, succeeded in escaping contagions more easily. Subsequently, when the Arab population became sedentary, after occupying the conquered cities, this initial advantage was significantly reduced. Mind blown. This is what Jared Diamond was talking about. That's communities that are sedentary, large densities will have more diseases. And when those diseases go to a population that has not had those animals or those dense populations will suffer. And this is what happened in North America, kind of reverse happened here, or similar kind of variables. Um, anyways, with that aside, if there's any more questions, let's look at the comments.
Brother, even Allah can use something as insignificant as a virus to spread his Islam, spread his religion.
But I'll be very
Yeah.
honest, Islam did have some very interesting evolutionary adaptive benefits, because due to Muhammad's OCD, which I feel was the case for his scrupulosity and his constant washing, uh, his OCD also ended up making Muslims more hygienic than most of the Europeans. Okay, they were doing wudu, they're washing, so that allowed limited the spread of diseases within Muslim communities in a way.
But like, what about the whole reusing the water and rubbing Muhammad's thing on his
Yes,
body?
exactly, right? Like there's his OCD can only give you so much. The delusions will give you glimmers of good things, not the best, the rest, So,
Yeah, because it's not based on the right principle, right? So sometimes
mhm,
you'll get it right.
mhm.
Like Muslims sometimes even come up with that example of the what is it, the camel urine, and they find an example from this extract that you can take out of the
Yeah,
urine,
yeah.
horse urine or something, and that could be
Mhm,
used to treat a certain disease. But
mhm.
that doesn't mean you drink urine, right? So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can extract anything and purify it like 5 times down the road in a pharmaceutical sense, and then you can't say that it's yeah, you can't do that. Actually, in
yeah,
fact, camel urine causes MERS, as far as I remember, Middle Eastern
yes,
Respiratory Syndrome.
yeah.
So again, yeah.
So the other thing I want to mention is that so this is sometimes hard for people to understand, that if there was another prophet like Muhammad, let's just say, and this didn't happen,
Mhm,
the exact set of circumstances that led to Islam becoming as big as it did, we would never have known. But because we're seeing it after the fact, we're amazed by it. It's because of all of these things that happened that benefited the system, like this example, which I never knew,
mhm,
of the plague, weakening these other empires, right? Making it
mhm.
seem all the more miraculous. But for the cases that weren't miraculous, they're gone,
Yeah.
right? Not because this was miraculous, but because of survivor bias.
Mhm.
The ones that
You're
survive
absolutely right.
are the only ones you see. So you're like, oh my God, this is, but no, all the other ones, but they just didn't have the same circumstances that led to the same result, right?
Mhm. It is, I'll say this, it is not the uniqueness of Muhammad's ideology that was required, or the only thing that could have filled that power pocket. Remember, there's Aswad Ansi and the list of false prophets in Arabia. If it wasn't Muhammad, somebody else would have just filled in that power pocket and capitalized on this. And instead of Islam, we might have had, what was that, Musaylima guy's religion.
Yeah.
And when you really start thinking about it from a rational perspective, yeah, this is just pure evolution, genetics, memes, political science happening, social evolution. There's nothing miraculous about this.
Going back to when someone asks you, can you go back to Islam? Like after knowing all this,
Nah, nah, yeah.
how can you even like consider, it's never mind Islam, even just the idea of, God in general, right? It's so gone.
Hmm. Totally, I totally agree. Like it's so far down the drain. Like it's there's it's a point where like you see some things and you learn some things after which you can never go back. It's all right.
So continue to the next one.
Yeah, let's go to the next slide.
Okay. So one more thing. Sorry, one more
Yeah.
thing I just thought of before we go. This is saying that it benefited them because they were nomadic.
Mm-hmm.
But didn't Muhammad also say, like, when the plague comes, don't run away from it and like stay where you are?
Yeah, he wasn't. I mean, that's the way he wanted to preserve, because he did see the plague in his life a little bit in 570. So he might have been going off on that. But yeah, you're right. He did say that don't run from the city to another one to avoid the spreading it. But that's not miraculous at all or anything. It's the common knowledge back then too. because like you could see that if you go from an infected city to another infected city, oh, the disease spreads. That's
It's
pretty
like a
easy to
bunch of
figure
sick
out.
people are coming in your city.
Hmm.
He probably didn't want them coming in. He's like, guys, stay away,
Yeah.
please.
Hmm.
Don't
Hmm.
come here. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
Which
sense. Yeah.
which in that case is, yeah.
That's a good
Hmm.
response. Okay.
Now, so I wanted to come to this. This is a very interesting facet of physics. So, in the modern world, we're going to come to something called evolutionary stable strategies. Okay. Um, and what I'm trying to get to is an idea that Islam in the past, because it was surrounded by ideologies that were at its level, was evolutionary stable back in the day. But now it's become obsolete as a strategy, as an evolutionary stable strategy. So the other thing is that we see these patterns in Muslim societies pop up again and again, and we saw in the history as well. How did Muslims go from the golden age of Islam being? This is why I brought this specific thing up. How did the Muslims go from the golden age of Islam, leading the world, to becoming the least educated, or the least educated of the bigger religions in the world? How did that happen? Because there's a point where when the printing press was invented, the Muslim world banned the printing press. And at that point, Europeans capitalized on it. And then there was a huge switch where all the knowledge was printed out in Europe, and the Muslims were banning the printing press, which caused a huge stifling of intellectual progress in the Muslim world. Okay. The other aspect is, because Muslims and their prophet were, Muslims say that the prophet could not read or write, that also lends into the idea that reading and writing is not necessary to be a successful human being, because their prophet was not. So it's not considered as noble of a trait or as a necessary trait. Okay. And like I said, I've seen this too, where a lot of places in Pakistan growing up, too many people will say that there's the worldly knowledge and then there's the religious knowledge. And this separation of knowledge, where they call it the real knowledge, I've literally heard ilm is, they say, is going to the madrasa and doing this. And then they say that the university knowledge is dunyavi knowledge or worldly knowledge, and it's not of any benefit. So a lot of people have this bias towards just religious knowledge and fundamentalism, and this creates this idea as well. That's at least from what I've seen in Pakistan. But anyways, we're getting, this is from 2016 from a Pew survey. Notice here on the left side, Muslims have on average 5.6 years of schooling worldwide. Fascinatingly, the big thing I want to point out, Muslims in non-Muslim countries where they are a minority are on average way more educated than Muslims that are in a Muslim majority country. So interestingly, secular nations, Muslims are more educated, rather being more educated in the Muslim majority nations, as you can see on the left side. The other thing, we have this map which highlights the average years of education for Muslims all across the world. So you're seeing that in Muslim majority nations, the level of education of Muslims is much lower than that in North America and Europe or Australia. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead to the next slide, and we'll see what the next trend is. Now, another interesting thing on the left side you see is, around the world, nearly 4 in 10 Muslims have no formal schooling. This is, again, keeping in mind from 2016. Do check out the full research, because the full research will highlight the trends for the past 10 years, how the gap has been improving, how Muslims are catching up. So the situation has been on a positive trajectory. But what I am trying to show you is, when you start looking at these figures, what is going on in the world in terms of politics and religion and violence and religious extremism suddenly starts to make sense. You are having, what we see is a huge disparity between the human population and its education level. So what's happening, and this is a quotation, is we are silencing intelligent people from the fear of offending the stupid people. Okay? And this is causing a lot of issues. And we're going to come to something very important in the next few slides. But anyways, let's read this first. Muslim women around the world lag behind Muslim men in average years of schooling by a year and a half, 4.9 versus 6.4 years. The gap is particularly large in Middle East, North Africa region, where Muslim men have an average of 6.9 years schooling, and women have 4.9 years. And at the bottom here is highlighted more than 4 in 10 Muslim women worldwide have no formal schooling, compared with 30% of Muslim men. And yeah, that's a very, 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 very important thing that she's highlighted. The comment from Homo sapien, let Afghan girls learn. Because what did Daniel Hakika just say? He's living in a Western country where he's gone to one of the most privileged institutions in the world, Harvard. And then he was talking about, oh yeah, the Taliban should ban women, and women who want to go to schools, universities are, like overplaying their card and spreading fitna or whatever. These kind of ideas go back to a lot of fundamental things in Islam and its attitudes towards learning and all that as well.
And where did his wife go?
Right, I think she went to Harvard as well. No,
She
they
went
met
to
there.
Harvard as well. He met her at Harvard. Astaghfirullah.
So do you see the hypocrisy in these people?
Yeah.
Like Daniel. Another thing is, like, you'll see, I'll point this out later on at the end, is like people like Muhammad Hijab with their degrees in political science lack the most basic wisdoms in terms of the history of social political discourse and its evolution and trajectory of our society. Like, you've been getting masters and stuff, and you're still chest thumping shirtless in Hyde's Park. Come on, guy.
He's a very much a showman, right? Like,
like one of the reasons what I want to do is I want to change the paradigm. I want to inject anthropology, inject evolutionary biology into the main discourse of the Islamic criticism or the Dawa community, because what we're experiencing now, man, it's low-level content like Muhammad Hijab or this Farid guy. Like, honestly, I would give their content 2 out of 10. It's not worth considering, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you are so daft that you say that one of the biggest miracles the Prophet did was split the moon in half, but the whole world was asleep, so nobody saw it. Read books, my friend. Read books about how these mythologies propagate in different societies, in different anthropological settings. You're not aware of that. Anyways, we'll keep going.
What would you give Ali Dawa out of 10 if these guys?
Oh, he's not worthy of being considered on this scale. He doesn't qualify.
I was gonna say, but like, isn't this the West's fault? Like, the West, actually the West is always the one to blame, because they're the ones, ruining all these countries. Okay, I'm being sarcastic, but let's talk about that. Let's talk about, like, how can you say this is actually the Muslim countries' fault? A lot of these countries are poor countries.
Oh yeah, totally. So we'll just look at the history of conquest, right? And the simple idea is, conquest has been part and parcel of the human species for a while. In fact, evolution predicates that tribes that are stronger, technologically more advanced, will either subjugate the smaller tribe or annihilate it. Another aspect of evolution that you will read in books is evolution is not, and this is a quote, I think, from Dawkins' Selfish Gene somewhere, is evolution is not that I must succeed. It is that others must fail. And genes over the course of history have utilized or understood this idea that in terms of competition with a resource, the easiest way is to eliminate the competition. Hence, we see this violence throughout the genetic kingdom, especially the mammals and animals like that. But saying why the West is doing it, no, conquest has been an ongoing facet, and it's been driving evolution. So, for example, Islam did this as well, like to the whole world, from in the Middle East, at least in 620s onwards to like 900s, they were conquering everything. You either pay jizya or off, stuff like that. So jihad did play a very important part in the spread of Islam, which Yasser Qadi has admitted. But I'm going to say something. Jihad back then was an evolutionary adaptive strategy for Islam, because it was surrounded by similar ideologies that were combative. And what Islam did, it made a martyrdom jihad idea. It's a meme it created, the jihad or the martyrdom meme, which allowed its followers to just go and spread the religion. But that was effective at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm not making a moral argument or anything. What I'm trying to give you is that these trends and stuff, they keep happening in human history. This happened with in
So
Australia and all that too. Anyways.
I was gonna say, I mean, we can just look at the values of many Muslim countries. Afghanistan is obviously, there's nothing stopping them from letting women study, like
Mm-hmm.
literally nothing, except that they don't want them studying. I know that in many other Muslim countries, they do allow women to study. They may have, you know, it's the I think gender segregation makes the situation worse, because in many cases the gender segregation means that there may or may not be an option for you. Like there might be an all girls school that you can attend, but if your culture
Mm-hmm.
doesn't allow it, I know Saudi, um, you know, I read Rahaf Muhammad's book Rebel, and it was like, you know, obviously women are not allowed to go out, and you know, they were living in a small community where they're just expected to stay home and, you know, be housewives basically. So what's the
Yeah.
point of studying up to a up to a certain, after a certain point? It's just like there's no point doing
Mm-hmm.
any further education. But then, you know, I think even she was asking like, well, what about the doctors, women doctors? You want me to go to a male doctor? Like at the same time, you're the one
I,
saying that I'm not allowed to interact with men. Now I'm supposed to take off my clothes in front of a male.
I actually have a very, very interesting story about this in Pakistan, because, like you mentioned, the culture surrounding women not going outside, not getting education is very prevalent in Pakistan. And so the Pakistanis will find it funny. My mom used to be a rishta auntie, okay? She would hook people up. And what ended up happening once, he literally got a request that they want a medical doctor girl who is a specialist, but she's not going to be practicing medicine at all after getting married. So I was like,
What
well,
the heck?
why? Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's because they want to be like, oh, I married a doctor or whatever. It's happened. And then, you know, like the hijab also limits opportunities for women for educational uh, and stuff in so many ways. I mean, honestly, I've experienced this my whole life when I was living in Pakistan. Like anytime my mom or my cousin wants to go out outside after like 6 7 p.m., it's like a whole deal. You know, they have to take some men with them because they're gonna get harassed. I remember we were walking. There's a place in Pakistan called Muddy, very very famous tourist spot, and there's a road called Muddy Mall, very very dense, kind of like a row of people are walking, and it's a Muslim country. And honestly, my female family members will get harassed as hell, and they'll be wearing very loose. Some of them are wearing like abayas, man. And they get grabbed. So it happens, and it's um, there's another layer to this topic as well, where you can get into the biology of evolutionary asexual models a society might adapt, and how it might influence what type of sexual dimorphism they manifest within the members of their male and female. And there is a very interesting thing that Dawkins will show you. For example, uh, let's take apes as a comparison, right? Gorillas behave in a harem style model, where one gorilla will be mating with 40, 50 other female gorillas, right? So the competition who gets to mate is happening gorilla versus gorilla. Gorilla has to beat the other gorilla to show his dominance, and then he gets the harem, right? Gorillas is balls, or their scrotum, seems to be much smaller compared to the counterpart chimps or bonobos, who are more promiscuous and don't adapt to a harem style model. Why is that? Because their competition, or their at times their sexual selection between sperms, is not the physical fight between the gorilla versus gorilla. It is the chimp trying to displace the semen of the other chimp, because apes are promiscuous. So the quality of the sperm is more required as a factor to impregnate. Hence, their balls are bigger, so they're producing more sperm and stuff like that. These kind of dimorphic things are very interesting, where you'll see that harem-styled, I think seals, I believe, is the bigger the harem size, I think the mass difference is also larger within the male and the female species. I think Dawkins mentions this in his book, The Ancestor's Tale. A very, very good one as well. But that's a completely side topic right now. We're not getting into sexual evolutionary theory or biology. That's not
Right.
the.
So to conclude, the problem here is culture. It's not like I mean, to some extent, I'm sure that if we actually did look at poor non-Muslim countries, some of them may also have the same symptoms of problems that we find with Islam, because they're also very conservative, right? And
Mhm.
I don't know if it would be as bad, and be interesting to see, because this one looks like it actually has separated it as Muslims versus non-Muslims. So
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to go into that to see, like African countries that are not Muslim, do they also have the same problems?
Actually, it does mention that as well in the detail. If anybody wants to go, this is a very detailed breakdown. And it's not just Islam, it goes into education levels of Christians, education levels of Buddhists. So we can see a very good comparison in terms of group demographics, which is very fascinating. But, anyways, let's go on to the next slide. Inverse relationship of intelligence and religiosity. This is something that to serious scientists or people who study cognitive science, neuroscience, has been apparent. Over and over again, we keep seeing this. There is a statistically significant inverse relationship of intelligence and religiosity. Okay, where what I'm trying to say is the more religious you are, the less likely you'll be as intelligent. And right now we're looking at the studies from Mr. Zuckerman. And what he says in the first on the left side here, a meta-analysis of 63 studies showed a significant negative association between intelligence and religiosity. Then he goes on. First, intelligent people are less likely to confirm and thus are more likely to resist religious dogma. Second, intelligent people tend to act or think in an analytical way as opposed to intuitive thinking style, which has been shown to undermine religious beliefs. Third, several functions of religiosity, including compensatory control, self-regulation, self-enhancement, and secure attachment, are also conferred by intelligence. Therefore, intelligent people may therefore have less need for religious beliefs and practices. What he said at the end there was religious people adapt religions to a lot of times to make sense of the mysteries or the existential dilemmas. But the problem is intelligent people don't need religion to explain those things, so they can just go without religion. So that's a very interesting one. Now, the first study, I believe, was published in 2013 August. So then there was pushback. So Zuckerman then did another study, and he published this much later. And in this time, he enhanced or upped the study sample size to 83 studies. He did another meta-analysis. Again, we conducted a new meta-analysis with an updated set of 83 studies confirming previous conclusions. The new analysis showed that the correlation between intelligence and religious beliefs, and it goes on, confirming the previous findings. He says at the end, thus one possible interpretation for the IRI is that intelligent people are more likely to use analytic style, i.e. approach problems more rationally. And this is very fascinating. Back in the day, religion did confer evolutionary advantage by uniting tribes, keeping tribes together on shared beliefs, enhancing birth rates, whatever. But now, as we go on in the modern world with our increase in knowledge and technology, a lot of those religious beliefs that used to be evolutionary stable strategies are no longer an evolutionary stable strategies, but have become
So
obsolete or maladaptive.
we should talk about what that means. So, and what is an evolutionarily stable strategy?
Very, very good question. So Dawkins bring this thing up as well. And in the selfish gene, there's a whole thing where they apply game theory to genetics and mind-blowing stuff there. But basically, a lot of the times, a group or a type of species will have a type of behavior they can adapt in any certain situation, which might, in that given situation, give them an evolutionary advantage. The problem with this is every evolutionary stable strategy is not forever an evolutionary stable strategy. Because we live in a dynamic, changing world, evolutionary stable strategies that were stable back 10,000 years ago are probably not stable now. And the stability of a strategy is not always incumbent upon the inside coherency or the internal coherency. Is actually also predicated upon the outside external factors. How does that strategy fit in within the other competitive strategies surrounding it? And sometimes, another thing Dawkins also mentioned is sometimes the way evolution works, because it has no foresight, it will put organisms on evolutionary trajectories that are almost always going to turn out to be evolutionary unstable in the long run, but maybe evolutionary stable in the short term. So very, very fascinating when you start thinking about evolutionary stable strategies. It's a whole new world of to fit in the social dynamics.
So a good example is for human beings, we always end up with 50-50 men and women. It basically balances out. That's
Mm-hmm.
evolutionary stable strategy.
Mm-hmm.
With I think it was walruses, you have this, as you were calling it, sexual dimorphism, where you have these gigantic walruses, and you have, if I remember correctly, there's a nice YouTube video on it, 8 to 10 times as many males as females, but most of those males will never reproduce. Yet
Mm-hmm.
that's stable because what happens is nature will flip and flop until it gets to a balance where it kind of evens out. So what we're talking about is something that it's stabilized now, right? It's not too many predators. There's too many.
Mm-hmm.
Uses the example of doves and hawks, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Well, I'll explain that further. So imagine if there's a there's a bird, and there's the bird species has two groups. One is a dove, and one is a hawk. A hawk is the aggressive, fighting bird, and the dove is the calm, peaceful one. So if you put a hawk and a dove together, the hawk will always win. But what you don't want happening is you don't want hawks to always keep winning, because then in a few generations, there'll only be hawks. And then they'll all be super
yeah,
violent, and then they'll all start fighting.
they'll be
So you
dead.
see that
Yeah.
it's not stable. So the stableness is in stable ratios. So a lot of times you'll see this pop up where certain human behavior, certain animalistic behaviors will only exist as a very small subset of the main population or main manifestation of the behavior.
Yeah, and another good example is, the interesting thing is I read this book several years ago, but these ideas stuck in my head because it was so powerful. The other
Mm-hmm.
thing that stuck with me from this book was the tit for tat strategy is
Mm-hmm.
evolutionarily stable, because what it means is that in most cases with most animals or even human beings, you don't necessarily want to just go out and be aggressive and fight unless you're fighting for land or mates or something. That's a different story. But say you're just like a tiger, another tiger, not going to just start fighting, because if they do, they're going to incur damage, they could die, and that's just the end of them. So what
Mm-hmm.
they'll do is, most of them, they'll have this tit for tat strategy, but if they're attacked, they will fight back. So that way, the one that's attacking, again, it's game theory,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
been played out over, generations, where,
Mm-hmm.
and the same, for the same reason, we have these weird biases in a nature. For example, loss aversion, where more we hate losing money more than gaining something. We will
Mm-hmm.
even, in some cases, and we see this with chimps, like you have two chimps, you're giving them both something, right? They both like, for example, cucumber is like a mediocre prize. They're both happy, you give them both a cucumber. Next time they do a task, you give one the cucumber, you give the other one a grape. There's been many examples where the guy with the cucumber gets mad and he'll throw the cucumber back at the researcher, right? Because like, what the heck, this guy is
Mm-hmm.
unfair. So like, this desire for fairness has evolved in us as a strategy, because
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't there, we would just be wiped out, right? The other thing
Yeah.
is jealousy, and I'm getting too excited about this topic.
Yeah. The other
But what
thing
you
that
mentioned, yeah, go ahead, Si.
Dawkins like mentioned is that altruism is a trait that evolved out of selfishness, out of selfish genes trying to preserve themselves selfishly, which created altruism. So it's a very fascinating idea. The other thing that you keep mentioning is I think the name for that specific thing in game theory is called the prisoner's dilemma, where you put two people and you give them the option and the retaliation. So you're stuck with which is the best strategy in that situation. But Dawkins does dedicate quite a significant amount of the end of his book to the prisoner's dilemma and explaining it. And they have these very beautiful computer models as well. Anyways, we got a little sidetracked there in evolutionary biology. Let's come back to the religiosity and intelligence correlation. Next slide. So here we have, again, another paper. And this is by a completely different researcher. So that's so we have different researchers, not the same person. So he says, I've highlighted and expanded it here. Over the past century, a remarkable body of research about the relationship of intelligence and religiosity has accumulated. So far, the majority of studies that investigated this relationship showed a negative correlation, indicating lower cognitive abilities of individuals reporting stronger religious beliefs. Although the effect direction has been observed to be largely consistent across studies, the reported effect strength varies substantially across studies. In all, our results show small but robust negative associations between religiosity and intelligence that are differentiated in strength but generalize in terms of direction over moderating variables.
What is it defining as intelligence here?
So there's various factors, like the definition of intelligence. They measure it by like they'll give you a bunch of tests where they'll measure let's say your analytical ability. They'll give you problem solving. They'll also measure your social ability. It's kind of like an IQ test, like but do go into the details. If you do open this paper, it's very thorough. Like they made plots and graphs that honestly I was really impressed by. They went into it deep. Uh, uh, so yeah, like that's why I'm leaving the links there. Anybody wants to read in depth, for sure, go for it. Because like these papers are like 10, 20 pages long at time. And I'm just showing you the abstract or just the conclusion because we have other things to cover.
All right. So I was going to say one thing we do find too is that people that are highly intelligent and religious, they tend to follow like a different version of the religion. For example, Dr. Hugh Ross, I know I'm going to praise him. He's a Christian guy, but like his reinterpretation of the Bible and Genesis and connecting it to cosmology and like
it's a forced perspective.
It's a forced perspective. What do you mean?
As in, like he's forcing it.
Oh yeah. Exactly. It's more like reading. It's more like science first, and then make it fit, right? It's like post hoc rationalization or whatever.
Yeah.
You don't find like intelligent people being like young Earth creationists or like you know what I mean, like those type of flat earthers. And so I think because you do find intelligent people do follow religion too, right? I guess there's a way they come up with.
And there's a reason for it, because if you do deviate from the norm back in the day, like for example, if let's say what's that Galileo, if he would have been bashing the church while also positing with the opposite of geocentrism, he would have been killed. So there's a little bit benefit. You got to go with the flow so you can pass it on your idea. And same with if you had Newton being a heathen back in the day, he would have bought and killed, and we wouldn't have calculus or stuff like that. Same with Darwin. He was a priest. He's actually, people don't know this, Darwin was a trained priest who dropped out of med school. He actually never completed a degree in biology. He got on a boat and then he found out the evolutionary theory. But fascinating, right? Where changes can come from. The other thing I want to mention about intelligence is, how do you define intelligence? Like there are obviously, you can get into a deeper philosophical conversation where intelligence can be a measure of survivability, gene expression, maximizing gene pool. Is it an organism's ability to manipulate its environment? Do you measure genetic fecundity? There are so many benchmarks for measuring intelligence, especially from the philosophical perspective, how you even define it. Because if intelligence is a thing that enhances survival, well, then there's been animals that have survived longer and in larger populations than humans. So are they more intelligent than us? So intelligence can be just as a meme, or the ability to genes to interact with the environment to maximize the survivability of the organism or themselves.
So we'll continue. Next one.
All right. Oh, I don't know what happened with the slide at the bottom. The text is all weird. Let me just...
Oh, it's because I imported it and not. Do you still have it shared?
Let me see here. Give me 1 second. Let me open it.
Yeah, it's just a URL. It's fine. I can still kind of read it.
Okay, here. I'll just read it from the slide here. I won't open it.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So here, I'm going to bring out another topic. This is very important. In the past, 20, 30 years, let's be very, very honest. I'm from Pakistan, okay? And I'm going to talk about this topic from a perspective of sympathy and sadness and empathy. Reason being is Islamic terrorism, okay? In the past 30, 40 years, we all know what has happened. We've all seen ISIS, Boko Haram, Shabab, the Taliban, Al Qaeda, the whole 9 yards, okay? And everybody knows that there's a singular ideology that stands mightily above all the rest combined in terms of propagating organized violence across the globe, and that is jihadism. I have not seen any ideology that has united isolated geographical groups with completely different cultures, completely different histories, and turn them into jihadist fanatics because the only thing they share as a common denominator is their religion and their book, which is the Quran or Hadith. Okay. Now, why I'm bringing this up? Okay. The issue is if you don't talk about Islamic violence and pretend that Islam is a religion of peace, Muslims keep dying. If you talk about Islam is a religion of violence or it is predisposed to violence, you're called an Islamophobe. And the conversation is stifled, but guess who's the loser at the end? Muslims keep dying. What I'm trying to say is so many people have been killed in Islamic terrorism. 90% of the victims are Muslims. What's happening is Muslims don't want to talk about the violence Islam has inflicted upon their own communities. When we point it out, you call us Islamophobes. The losers are Muslims. Muslims are dying. My country has suffered so much. I've been witness to these things, these acts of terrorism, like first-hand witness. I've been there. I've heard the shaking and the rumbling from these blasts. I've seen friends. I've lost people. And all my life, I've been hearing this. It's not Islam. It's just terrorism. Guys, come on. Let's wake up. So let's read some statistics. Basically, this is from Fondapol. It's a think tank, European think tank. I'm not going to use just one website. I'm going to use a bunch of different websites for the statistics so that I'm not using a biased statistic or a misleading statistic. So we'll use this one first. Between 1979 and May 2021, we counted 48,035 Islamist terrorist attacks around the world. Can anybody tell me how many Christian groups are there? 1,000 attacks in that period? 2,000, 3,000, 10,000? You see what I'm trying to get to? Is there's no religion that is this on top of a list with such a gap to the second place. The other scary trend is this: there has been an increase. If you look, the amount of attacks and deaths has been exponentially increasing. People keep telling you Islam is religion of peace. Islam is religion of peace. But since this religion of peace that has been going around, what has happened? You've had basically hundreds of different organizations, which we'll see in a second, been listed as terrorist organizations. There have been so many people dead, so many issues. Anyways, at the bottom, you can see that 97% victims are Muslim. You can see that the figures per country are listed. I can see my country there too. And that's what I'm trying to say. This is not about Islamophobia. This is about a bigger issue here. Humans are dying because there's an ideology that has stuck because of an evolutionary horrible card that we were played. And now these people are unable to see that their own ideology is killing themselves. And this is something that needs to be talked about. This is a responsibility on the Muslims, the Dawa boys, and the other non-Muslims. And the West also that keeps playing Islam is religion, peace, Islamophobia is also partly responsible for the worsening of this. Anyways, I got a little emotional because I have seen so much of this religious violence in my life, and it's so stupid. It's so ridiculous. This conversation could have been had 20 years ago. And like I said, we're literally stopping intelligent people from having this discussion at open, proper forums because we fear that we'll offend the stupid people. I'm being very blunt here, but that's the case.
And the enabling, I
More
feel
idiots that will go right
yeah,
wing. Yeah,
well-intentioned idiots, I guess you
exactly.
could say,
Like I
right?
said, I mean, I can criticize Islam, but my criticism of Islam and then somebody misinterpreting my criticism and then using that as a motivation to attack other people is not what we're trying to do here. Okay, but that's also the aspect what we need to be aware of, because there's a lot of, like you said, well-intentioned people but end up acting in idiotic ways that can cause more harm than good to the discussion.
Yeah. And we only get away with it because we're like two brown guys.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the funniest thing I found, and this is it's kind of insulting, where when I'm talking to a person who's in Canada, he's a converted Muslim who's never stepped foot in a Muslim country, and they're trying to tell me that Islam is religion of peace, and I'm here coming from Pakistan, and I'm like, yeah, keep going, bud.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's pretty bad. And things are just getting more and more unhinged day by day. But
Hmm.
no, it's good. We need to keep talking about these things.
Like I said, this is I'm propagating. I'm talking about this for the Muslims. I don't want Muslims constantly dying at the hands of terrorists, because this is not about Islam. My genes are from that country. My family is still Muslim. My brothers, my relatives, they're also being affected. My genes, and if you read the Selfish Gene, he says something very interesting. Your genes or copies of your genes don't only live inside you; they live inside other people. Okay, and genes recognize that, and that's why there's parental investment, familial bonding, because you're not just preserving yourself, you're preserving copies of your own gene to be passed on. And honestly, I'm not even talking about religion here. People are dying because a meme has gone haywire, like a virus in their brain, and this needs to be fixed. We know that, yes, the human tendency to be violent has obviously been there throughout our history, but at the same time, take Islam out of the equations, but you can see terrorism is very focused in Islamic countries, is popping up again and again there. There are other factors, of course, where you're talking about poverty, politics, and etc. But you can still standardize those and not see other people that experience the same type of poverty become jihadists the same way we see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a thing that's missed by many of these. Again, I don't know what to call them, but even some academics like Yuan Cole and like peaceful
Yeah,
Muhammad, like I don't know what Muhammad they're looking at. Like it's like
I mean,
what
I really want to talk to Dr. Javad Hashmi about this, because he's all about Islamophobia. This is the type of discussion you should be having. I understand his perspective as well. Like, what he's trying to do is trying to reform the meme of Islam, and that is the way forward. But at the same time, when you make excuses for a reformed or a modern version of Islam to exist, you also justify for the constants or continuity of the extremists to exist, because extremists derive their beliefs from which book? The same book you're reading. Okay. So that's the thing. Like, how can a book that is like the Quran be so weirdly interpreted, where one group, or okay, let's be very real, there's not one terrorist organization in Islam. It's just lists, there's 20, 30 all over the world. They all keep coming to the same conclusion. And the West keeps saying, no, they're wrong about their own intentions. It's
yeah.
not, it's delusion.
Yeah, I mean, we also have examples of American white men that out of nowhere spontaneously combusted into jihadis, like
Mm-hmm.
John, whatever his name is, the guy that became the top ISIS guy.
Yeah.
There's also Johnny Walker Lind. There's these people like in the middle of like one of them was in rural Texas. His mom gave him a Quran and like he spontaneously turned into some crazy Islamic extremist. Like it's wild.
I'll be very honest. Like, I in Canada have met in person people who ended up getting arrested for terrorism. I'm not joking. This happened. I was Muslim back then. I'm not a Muslim now. But what I'm trying to say is, this happened and it's known. Not gonna name places and people, but just letting you know, I've had firsthand experience with this. in a Muslim, in a Western country with a convert who became like that. Okay. And I was trying to be like, hey, calm the hell down, dude. You're not making sense. But
Yeah.
all right, let's go to the next slide. So another thing, like I was saying, I wanted to show you the heat map. This is from a different database, okay? This is from the Global Terrorism Database. And remember, this is run by the University of Maryland. This is not some rando just making a compilation website. You can go to the link and you can download this. And to get the database itself, you have to provide ID and names, and then they'll approve if you can download it. But they do still give the broader overlying statistics. But you can see clearly in the heat map where's the terrorism happening. Like, I mean, I can clearly see there is a pocket in where Pakistan, India, Taliban, the Middle East, the Africa, predominantly. Yes, there are obviously going to be offshoots here, like in the Northern America, with the drug overlords and all that drama. But you can clearly see that there's a lot more concentration of attacks and stuff there. Partly also because more humans live in this circle, China, India, and Pakistan, than outside of it. But it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next slide, see if there's any other. This is interesting. This is from, I believe, the Europol report. And on the left side, you can see arrests for jihadist terrorist offenses in EU member states. And they list out, this is something interesting. This is what people don't normally hear. Not every arrest related to a terrorist is reported in the news. This is very interesting. Just from 2020 to 2022, you can see how many hundreds of people have been arrested in terms and linked to jihadist terrorism in Europe alone. And they've even put the name of the country right next to it. It's shocking. The figures are quite scary. This is just a 2-year period, man. And we're going to go to the next slide, and you're going to see that it gets way worse. So if you want, you can go to the link, and when you hover your arrow over the bubbles, it gives you the number. What I did, I just hovered it and I put the numbers on the side, so you don't have to go and open the link. But as you can see, arrest figures by year, and look at this. There was in 2016, there was 700 arrests for terrorism offenses in Europe. What is going on, guys?
Yeah, this is wild. Yeah, this is quite a lot.
You don't see these statistics. And if you mention these statistics, you are called an Islamophobe. At a certain point, this conversation will need to happen and should happen. Well, let's go. Let's go to the next slide. Now, this is an exercise that we'll do together now. And before we do this, what I've done here is I've taken like 4 big countries of the developed world, USA, Canada, UK, Australia, and they have designated terrorist organizations listed on their official web pages. Now, these lists, I'm categorically telling you, are not lists of Islamic terrorist organizations. These are generalized lists, which also list non-Islamic terrorist organizations. This is just a generic list for terrorist organizations. But as we know, we already know why, these lists are for some reason 99% dominated by just names of jihadist groups. And I want you to open them one by one and scroll. We're not going to read all of them, but open them and scroll through just so people get an idea how dire the situation is. So this is from, I believe, the US's. And if you can zoom in so they can read the names, and you'll be shocked. Like, look, try to find non-Islam. It'll be 2, 3, but then scroll down and it's just Islam, 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 Islam. It's just Islam, bro. It's almost a joke.
They're not Jewish, eh? But apparently that certain group is considered the worst one, and okay, yeah.
But you can get the point. Yeah, this is kind of ridiculous, where the whole list is just a bunch, and in the end you'll see a few other ones.
Oh, this is going far back. I should have started at the bottom.
Yeah,
and gone upwards. But yeah.
Now let's go to the next list. I think that one's from Canada, our homeland. Yeah. The country that just recently appointed an Islamophobia minister, which is kind of interesting. But I do understand, like what happened with the killings in the Montreal mosque, and that is absolutely unacceptable. But point here again being shown is this is Canada's official list of designated terrorist organizations, and if you scroll down the list, it's again Islam, 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 Islam. It's like it's like, guy, I want you to write Control F Islam and see how many search hits you get. Oh my god, look at the side of the bar, the scroll bar.
Oh my god.
This is bad.
306 or something? Or is it?
Oh man.
I mean, it's not. It's
It's repetitive, but still, that's quite. Now
yeah.
this is Canada. This is one of the more progressive human rights countries.
Yeah.
Now let's go to the UK. Ali Dava Muhammad Hijab. They're gonna be proud of this one.
Yeah, it's interesting that when you talk to them, they always try to counter with what do you call it? The other governments are also terrorists. Like, for example, America for bombing, countries and stuff like that. But what they're not really understanding is these are two different things we're talking about. We're talking about like, basically hawkism, like hawkish countries, imperialism, colonialism, versus terrorism against individuals on an individual basis, affecting, like using terror basically, right? And imagine these groups actually got the power that they want. Would they behave like the US?
No.
Would they wouldn't, right?
They would take over the world.
They'd be much, much, much worse, right? So you can't even compare them. Not to say that everything the US does is good either. I mean, obviously, but that's not the point we're making, right? Okay, so this is the UK's list.
Yeah, and this, let's see, prescribed. Okay, yeah. So this is also
Abdullah Azam and Abu Nidal, Abu Sayyaf, Ajnad Misr, soldiers of Egypt, Islamic Allah, Al-Gamiyat al-Islamiyya, Al-Ghuraba, Al-Ittihad al-Islamiyya, Al-Murabitun, Al-Muntaz. Okay.
you get the point.
I'm only on A right now. Yo, like. Okay. Yeah, like I get the point. Oh man, yeah, this is a mic drop for sure.
We'll do the last one with Australia.
Oh, okay, Australia.
I might have to copy paste that one in.
Okay. Okay. Right. So this would be this one. Oh wait, no, we did. Oh wait, this is the US one. 1 second.
The Australian one, you'll have to copy paste it.
Okay. I think I found it. I wonder if the Muslim countries do this too, and what would they put on the list?
No, what's funny is in Pakistan, it's all Muslim organizations too, which is weird.
They don't like them either.
Yeah.
Saudi hates terrorist groups, right? You're right. That's a good point. Okay, so this is the Australia one. Yeah. It's the same. It's pretty much
a joke, man.
We should see how many are not. Okay, Kurdistan Workers' Party. That one's not Islamic. That's one. National Socialist Order, 2, 3. Okay, 4. So 4 out of, I don't know how. 4 out of 29 on this, and this is a short list compared to the other ones.
Yeah,
they're going for the really big ones, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we get the point that it's a disproportionate representation, a highly disproportionate representation of Islam in the violence or religious terrorism sphere compared to other religions.
Yeah. Should we continue next slide?
Yeah, let's go to the next slide. So I think this is the last slide, and basically just summarized a few things here. Islam is a wholly anthropological phenomenon widely attested to in our history. It is a meme created by the Arab gene pool in the 7th century. While Islam was adaptive in the past with its conquest-driven jihadist ideology that presented an evolutionary advantage in early group dynamics where violence is rewarded, this was in an era where you were surrounded by ideologies that were also predisposed to violence. If you were too nice and timid, your tribe would be swallowed up. This meant that the evolutionary stable strategy for early Islam differed significantly from what would be deemed evolutionary stable today. In fact, Islam may be deemed evolutionary unstable in the modern world, as manifested earlier in the previous few slides with what we just saw. Evolutionary stability or profuseness of an ideology is not dependent on it being objectively true, but rather how it fits in the environment, relevant to its competitive memes. If an idea infers upon its holder a survival advantage by uniting a tribe, etc., it will be adapted regardless if the idea deems the shape of the earth as flat. The intelligence of the subjects of a tribe determine if a meme will take hold and spread. The meme may be quite absurd, such as genies or the splitting moon. The memes that have shaped our world have exerted some dramatic effects on gene pools. Religious memes or cultural memes may prevent mixing of gene pools in a way similar to island isolation, akin to island gigantism or dwarfism, and send groups on different evolutionary trajectories. So that was just a quick summary of what I think Islam, and a quick glance over what we went over today, fitting Islam within a selfish gene meme kind of paradigm. Uh, and yeah, if there's any questions, any comments, we can go on for a little bit more.
Yeah, you can put your camera back on.
Alrighty.
So yeah, that was a great presentation. Thank you for putting that together. I guess I could just go to the super chats quickly for everyone that donated. Thank you guys so much. So Zagros said, miss these guys. Thank you so much,
Thank
Zagros. It's nice
you.
to see you again. The two Coilies, now the two Abdullahs by Denver Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all your donations.
Stop Scamming Man said, Ibn Ishaq's 8th century bio of Muhammad says Aisha got in trouble for how she positioned him when he died. To this, she said she was blameless because of extreme youth at the time, about 12 years after the marriage.
So there's a very interesting incident I will highlight here. This is found in the Hadith books as well as the Sirah books, where before Muhammad died, he was given a medication, and then Muhammad became paranoid that he'd been poisoned, so he asked everybody in the house to drink that same medication, and then a few days or so later, he died. So the story is there, but yeah, he did express paranoia regarding being poisoned he was given a medication for his fever or something.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Denver Johnson again to both Abdullahs. Not sure if you know this ex-Muslim movement. Oh yeah, we talked about this one. Is gaining massive ground in India, who happens to have the third largest Muslim population in the world. Very happy to see that.
Mm-hmm.
We want obviously people to be able to choose for themselves. So that's great, right?
At the same time, I will say, like, there's a lot of religious extremism that's going on in India from the Hindutva crowd as well, which is not acceptable, not okay. It's very sad, and given that I come from a country, Pakistan, India, the whole idea of breaking them apart for religious reasons and stuff, it's just sad. I hope the another way I'll put it, the genes of the subcontinent people, which had produced one of the earliest civilizations, like the Indus Valley civilization, for thousands of years, where our culture, our history was, not gonna lie, was destroyed by Islam. When the invaders came in from Afghan and all that, the Ghaznis totally destroyed our culture. I mean, India and Pakistan, they would have had there would have been no Pakistan, but it's such a huge land, such a diverse culture, such a large population, so much history, but they're just fighting. They're the same people. They're fighting over an outsider religions that invaded them. But again, that's how memes work. I hope that.
Yep. So DC wanted to say, do you guys still think fondly of Dr. Yasir Qadhi?
He'll come around to it. I don't think he's gonna stay Muslim for too long. The stuff that he's been saying recently is quite borderline takfiring himself, honestly. Or he'll be ostracized by the community for raising the whole Quran, whole issue.
Yeah. Or he might end up, God forbid, like Mufti Abu Layth. People breaking
Mufti
into his
Abu
house.
Layth, or become the Bart Ehrman of Islam.
Oh, but that would be amazing.
Yeah.
That would be freaking amazing. But I don't know if the incentives are lined up well enough. but Emin can continue doing what he does with the safety of his life. I don't know if you can do that as a Muslim scholar like that,
That
right?
comment is actually, yeah, very, very good point. And that comment is actually also spot on. That's been highlighted right now. Muslim apologists say that the fitra is like the one God, but then when you look at the history of mankind, it's all full of polytheism and statues.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. No, there's actually the whole idea of theory of mind, the bicameral mind, and how written language also induced a whole, perhaps a whole sphere of religiosity. Where, to give you an idea, most of our history we evolved as an oral spoken species, but then in only just the last few thousand we started writing language. Now, for writing language, you need specialized brain regions, the Wernicke's or the Broca's areas to be developed. They're on the left side of your brain, the left hemisphere. And the issue is that these are fairly recent developments in the human brain. Now, there's a doctor who wrote a whole book in the 80s, A Bicameral Mind, where he says that the evolution of written language caused the early populations that were developing this skill to hear voices in their head, because the right and the left hemisphere were interacting in a different way than they were normally used to. And so those people back in that time of revolutionary history might have been more predisposed to auditory hallucinations that they might have misinterpreted as God speaking to them or angels. So there are these kind of nuances when you see in our history. It's fascinating and eye-opening. All right.
Okay,
Any other
the next
questions?
one.
Mm-hmm.
Next one. Okay, yeah, we're talking about bad weather. Denver Johnson said bad weather. It's amazing here in White Rock, BC.
Honestly, like the weather has been crazy this past year, this past summer. It's just wild. I've never seen weather like this in my whole life. What we're experiencing right now. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna tell you where I am, but
Ex-Muslim Kamal said just gave a donation. Thank you so much.
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
P, nice to see you again, and for your super sticker, and for also joining the channel again. Appreciate that. And stop scamming, man. Wow, lots of comments today. This is a fascinating vid by the academic and early Christianity James Tabor, Jesus, son of Pantera, ancient slander or historical probability. The evidence is worth pondering and has ramifications for Islam and Christianity. I'm not familiar with this theory.
Yeah.
Are you?
No, I haven't heard of this, but it sounds kind of like along the lines of like the Petra theory or the same genre, I think. But
Mhm.
no, I would definitely love to look into that because, like, I'll be very, very honest. When you look at Islamic history, there is literally a vacuum of written records. Like, there's literally a vacuum where we don't know what actually happened. And the only way we know what happened in the past few centuries was the books written hundreds of years after, talking about the past. So there, the sixth, fifth, sixth, seventh century, there's a huge emptiness of literature. And I'll be the earliest collection, even of the Hadith Sira books, goes up to at least 100 years after Muhammad, which would be the Sahifa of Imam Ibn Hanabbi or something like that. Uh, but yeah, no, and Bukhari, Muslim were 250 years after Muhammad died. Just to give it a perspective, that would be equivalent of me sitting in the year 2000 trying to investigate a person's daily life that lived 1750, and that too only from oral tradition.
Yeah, it's not even
That's
comparable because we have actual
yeah.
writing now and stuff, right?
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so thank you, Stop Scamming Man, again. And Denver Johnson was wondering, okay, so we talked about this. Adam Seeker, thanks for the suggestion. C. Lamprey, how much can you dwell on Muhammad? Is he a completely made up character? I'm not convinced he's completely made up.
Hmm. I
That's,
don't think he's completely made up either. I think there is actual, I believe in Sean Anthony's book, he shows contemporary sources that do mention Muhammad as a man. Although the stories and the details might be off, I believe there was definitely somebody named Muhammad that was in Arabia at that time.
mm-hmm. All
He.
right. Yeah, let's leave it at that because I want to close off. So nice to see Gondal. Keep up this amazing work.
Thank you
We
so
have
much.
I have so many comments on my channel saying, "Where's Gondal?" So you guys got him back.
Also, guys, if you want to keep like you have access to all our amazing work now for free, like we'll put the link for all the slides to be downloaded in the description of this video as well, and link it to Samir's blog. But yeah, you have up to, I think it's like actually 1,400 slides in total. Like it's
Mhm.
crazy how much material there is to go through. So yeah, take it, snapshot them, send them on WhatsApp groups, print out those slides, use them. It's for free. It's all about getting the knowledge to the people. Yeah, and thank you as well.
All right. So next one here, and I'm just gonna go through these fast. Muslims had to show Muhammad as an illiterate, otherwise he would have been classified as pagan. I don't totally understand this comment because he was pagan more or less. I mean, his whole
Yeah.
culture and everything. It was more about coming with a religion, like a book, which was the miracle. Which I don't even know if he was illiterate, to be honest.
Another thing is that if you were to view the modern religions like Islam, Judaism, Christianity within just the past 2,000 years of human history, you will get a very different perspective if you put them against the backdrop of all human history. And that's where we're trying to get to is Islam and Christianity and Judaism are not like in that uh, they are unique manifestations of a modernish phenomenon in our evolutionary history. But if you look back at our like 200, 300,000 of years ago, it's very fascinating to see how we evolved these complex genes and memes, and slowly agriculture came in, and then agriculture drove religion and language and dense population centers and crowd diseases. And here we are in the modern world. But that specific claim about Muhammad, I don't understand it either.
Okay, so yep, continue. Next one. Joseph Mel said, I recommend Demonic Males by Dale Peterson and Richard Wrangham. So this is about violence in among humans. I haven't read it. I just looked it up
No,
while I
me
was
neither.
streaming. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting book. I'll definitely look it up for sure. That might be, yeah,
Thanks.
right up
Thank
my
you very,
alley.
thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.
And Reminiscence, great work, guys, assembling these slides. As I mentioned, Abdul Gondal, all the credit to him. He made these slides. Thank you again for your donation from Turkey. Appreciate you always coming
Thank
and
you so
supporting.
much. Thank you so much. And we'll put these slides in the download link as well for you guys. There are
And
many parallels between white supremacy and Arabization. Yes, that's actually very true. When I think about it, and the obsession that Pakistani people who are not Arabs get obsessed with Arab names, Arab cultures, acting like Arab, it's very weird.
okay,
Jihadi
so
terror.
go ahead.
Jihadi terrorism is an intracultural problem. American imperialism bombings are an intracultural problem. So what you can do is you can reduce it or use a reductionist approach and say like humans have been fighting each other for resources all over our history. Some groups are better than the other ones, and some groups are not. And unfortunately, evolution predicates that this is what's driven our society forward. Selected traits. Um, Now, when like even Samir mentioned earlier, you cannot make a direct comparison between America, the US, or these Western powers, bona fide, not bona fide, but militaries that adhere to certain sets of rules and regulations versus fringe jihadist groups. That's not a correct analogy, in my opinion. It's, because the operative capacity is different, the technology, the type of warfare and tactics used is vastly different. And in one of the studies that I did reference, they do statistically differentiate in the types of attacks and how many were guns versus knives versus blasts and so on and so forth. All right.
Okay, and that was the last one, but we got one more. And it says, I second what Gondal says about being a victim. And Jir Alo Mirza, one of the biggest clerics in Pakistan, has been attacked twice. Do you know what he's talking about?
Oh yes. So Engineer Ali Mirza is like, he still wears like this pug and this beard and stuff, but he's got this slightly modern interpretation, and he's trying to inject, like he's trying to take people from sectarianism, and he does say things that go against orthodox or traditional Islam, which has landed him in trouble with the hardcore people. And he's been, I think, 3-4 assassination attempts on his life. Even Harris covered a few of those before. He's even talked about them. But yeah, and this is what I'm trying to say. Like I've seen, I'll tell you this. my grandma's eye doctor was a general or an army general, like an army doctor, uh, very high up, and he was killed in an Islamist attack. He's a doctor, an eye specialist doctor, and stuff like this happens all the time. I mean, we have Mashal Khan in Pakistan, the Sri Lankan guy that was beaten to death. Recently, there's a guy that torched on fire, dragged him out of the police station. Like, it's crazy. And then going up, I saw Salman Taseer and the whole shebang. Like, in Pakistan, like, this topic is like, don't even talk about it if you want to live. Like, it's gonna be bad, and especially with the political instability with Imran Khan and all that going on right now. Yeah, I don't know where Pakistan is headed, but
So just to end on a positive note, because I want to end on something positive. We have a lot of good things we're seeing out of this. The work that we're doing, like every single day, we're getting messages from people saying that this helped them, they've left Islam, that this had impact on their lives. And we know that the things are spreading, the ideas are spreading like memes. So our memes are fighting, our good memes are fighting the bad memes out there. So so this is the goal, to continue doing this, so let's end on a positive note. And last word is to you, Abdullah Gandal.
Well, it was a pleasure being back. I'll try to be more active. I'm definitely going to be changing the style of content that we are delivering. We're going to be levitating away from the traditional methods of criticizing and making fun of Islamic hadith and Quran verses, but we're going to be talking more about the evolution of Islam, how biology might fit into it, how the neuroscience fits into it. We might be redoing the Epileptic Prophet series again, answering with newer objections. A few updates as well. So I am talking to a couple of researchers, published, bona fide researchers, and I might be having the Epileptic Prophet theory published under pseudonyms because of the nature of the topic. Anybody who touches this will obviously will get rushdied. But let's just say there are academics that are involved that have looked at these slides, the second edition, and there are neurologists involved in this as well now. And then I think we will get a special guest. I'll talk to Samir if we can get that person on. There's a very special guest that I would love to have on to discuss that with us.
I think I know. We'll see.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know. Anyways,
I have a theory. All right. Okay,
Yeah.
guys and gals and everyone else in between or non-specified or any of the above. Thanks for watching. It was a pleasure for all of you to be here. And if you're watching the replay, thanks for watching all the way to the end. Most appreciated. Thank you for the super chats. If you're watching after, you can also leave super thanks. And to the rest of you, please consider joining the Patreon. And hopefully we'll have some good news in the future for the next one. All right. And that's all for now.
Ma salam.
Take care. Bye.